Should you buy Call of Duty Vanguard? Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Diaside, and that right there is the question of the hour and what we're going to discuss fully in depth. Essentially what that means is that I'm going to give you a very brief breakdown about the pros, the cons, and some of the neutral points of the game from my perspective, as well as some of the things that I think that you will like or don't like, and so on and so forth. We're going to cover things like the TTKs, how fast that weapon can be leveled, the weapon attachments, different types of operators, map variety, customization, different types of player lobbies, etc, and the list goes on. And with that brief synopsis, the only thing left to do is just to simply sit back, relax, eviscerate that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's jump right into the video. First off, understand that all this game costs is $60. That's actually the base version of the game that I got, and I believe that you can get an $80 version as well as a $100 version, but I'm not sure exactly what those all entail, and so just know that everything that I'm going to discuss already comes in the base game as is. Now, if I had to compare this game to different COD games in the past, I would say that this game does a couple things very well, aka the pros, and that includes number 1, the weapon customization. This game right here, Vanguard, does an amazing job of the weapon customization, as you have brand new attachments, different types of perks that can actually be found on the weapons themselves, easy to understand stats, like say for example +1 recoil, -1 accuracy, etc, all once again as attachments. I mean, you got things like the different types of bullets that you can use, you got different types of muzzle attachments, different types of stocks, actual perks to increase the reload speed on the weapons themselves, which by the way are going to be different from weapon to weapon to weapon, and that's what makes this weapon customization so unbelievably unique. However, one con to this is that it's going to take you a very long time to level up the weapon. To be more exact, each weapon has approximately, I think off the top of my head, 70 levels. Don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure it's 70 levels, and that's going to take a ton of XP. I can't say the same thing for you, but when I'm using a weapon, I don't want to have to take it forever to be able to use all the attachments the way in which I want to use the weapon. And so one way that you can actually up the speed of leveling the weapon is actually by operator functionality. This goes back to one of the pros of the game itself, and that is that when you happen to unlock this operator or that operator by completing something like say assassination kills or something else along those lines, you then have the option to pick that operator and then can use that operator with their preferred weapon, say for example Roland and the STG-44. The STG-44 is one of the very first assault rifles that you're automatically given in the game, and so with that, you're then going to unlock Roland very quickly as an operator, and when you use him as an operator, you're then going to level up that weapon much faster using him specifically. In addition to this, you then get to unlock some different types of skins, or maybe some different types of XP attachments for that weapon that are only unlocked via the operator, and so finally you have some very good pros here, and that the operator that you select now has functionality besides just aesthetics. Now I know some of you have been watching this gameplay, which by the way, I'm going to try and make it as unedited as possible, so then you can really get a sense of how the environment is in the game, and that then brings me to my next point in that this game is exceptional in the interactive environment. What do I mean by this? Well, let's say for example you want to go through a door. Well, not only can you open and close that door, but you can actually destroy that door. You can break wood on this barn or that barn, or you can even blow up the environment by something like say a gas can exploring that, or maybe shooting a truck and exploring that, etc. And so you can then interact in these environments in a wide variety of ways. Personally, I love this element of the game because it adds a much more dynamic element to it, and that the player decision making process is that much more in depth. Following this exact same wavelength, I want to talk about the map variety, because with these interactive environments, you got maps that are close quarters and small quarters, etc, and you can have a very nice dynamic here to be able to play with sniping in one map, or maybe SMGs in the next, or maybe have a combination of the two, with assault rifles and sniping on this one on that one, and you get the point that I'm making. No longer is it just these close quarters maps where you have to always be using a hyper-aggressive playstyle, and rather instead, you can play more passively, or rather if you want to, you can camp. This actually brings me to my next point for actually one of the cons of this game, and that is that these maps are designed to have so many nooks and crannies that you can literally have such a wide variety of places to camp that you can never ever anticipate all of them. In my perspective, camping is my pet peeve, and man, that stuff burns my butt when you got some little camping munchkin over there in that corner who gets you from this corner one time, the next corner the next time, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's it gonna take to make this hooligan a little bit salty? So then he never does that again. Now I'll come back to the idea of camping and some more cons associated with that in just a little bit, but the very next thing I want to talk about is that there are two ways in which you can customize the game to your perspective, and that is customizable settings as well as the player selections via the combat pacing options. What I mean by this is that there's a massive, unbelievable pro here, and that the game is extremely customizable via the settings, and that then tells something like, say, more motion blur or less motion blur, especially while you're running. I ain't gonna lie, it's one of the first things that I did is I went directly into the settings because I was having a little seizure. I was like, oh my gosh, I got Tourette's, and I had to turn that stuff off almost instantly because I was like, no, I ain't having that. Next, you can also go ahead and have some controller sensitivity settings, not just someone for, say, like the ADS when you're aiming down sights, having the reticle move more or less this way or that way, but also being able to control how much that each one of these buttons is pressed heavily or less. The final point that I'm going to make on this is that me personally, I am severely red-green colorblind, and so when I'm seeing players in my mini-map, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't decipher between one way or the next. And so rather just having the typical game settings of colorblind settings via this 3, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but you guys know what I'm talking about. There's 3 of them, and so in just having just those 3, you can actually go in and customize the player icons on the minimap to be the exact colors that you want. That's why throughout this entire game footage so far, you're seeing me be shot with a blue color. The reason why that is because that blue is much more vivid to my eyes, and thus I can see exactly where I'm being shot from. Not just this, the enemy team's names when they're coming towards me are now shown in blue right above their player. And so that's very, very vivid and bright, and I can't freaking miss it. So I know exactly that person is just that, an enemy instead of a teammate. That one fact alone is a huge, huge pro. So if you haven't done it yourself, then by all means do that and try it out, because I'm telling you, it's definitely worth your time to check out those settings. Now the very last pro that I've got for you, before we get into some of the neutral points as well as some more of the cons, is that this game is now going to allow you to have 3 different types of combat pacing options, which is essentially matchmaking selections of tactical, assault, and blitz categories. What this then means is that you're then going to be able to select the player size of pools in which you want to actually go up against. For example, tactical is usually going to be something like, say, 6v6, maybe 8v8, or 10v10, and those types of maps. On the flip side, this though, you got assault, and that can then be up to 20 or 28 players in one massive map, whereas if you actually want to take this one step further, you got blitz, and you can do the exact same thing, but this time around it's going to be 28 to 48 players in one freaking lobby. I know it's crazy and insanity, but nonetheless, I still like that because it gives you a lot of customization in how you want to play the game. Maybe for example, you want to try and get XP 24/7 non-stop, and so if you want to level a weapon very, very quickly, go play blitz. You know why? Because you're going to have a gunfight engagement almost instantly as you spawn, and you're going to be able to get into a lot more gunfight engagements, allowing you to level up the weapon much, much faster. Notice there how I said the gunfight engagements. Well, this is the next talking point that I have, and that's going to be rather a neutral talking point, because in every single engagement, this game across the board, no matter what you're using, an SMG, an LMG, a assault rifle, etc., all have extremely fast TTKs. Is this good or bad? Well, that really just depends upon you and your personal playstyle. Many players who have a hyper-aggressive playstyle like that faster TTK, like myself, but others may not like as much as what I do, and rather you might want something slower. So just keep in mind that if I had to put this into perspective for you, this game is kind of like something like, say, Cold War mixed with hardcore, but Cold War in the regular team deathmatch settings that you're thinking of has about middle of what the hardcore was back in Cold War as well. And so it's kind of that middle ground between those two matchmaking settings, but that's just how it's going to be for all the engagements and regular core within Vanguard as a whole. Now the very last points here that I have is kind of what I mentioned before, a pet peeve of mine. The camping in this game is just ridiculous. There's a couple things that contribute to this, like number 1, the kill streaks. Kill streaks are just that, kill streaks, and so you can't die in order to get the kill streak itself. Once you do, you're then going to reset. Now although there is a perk somewhere in the game, I'm not sure exactly when you actually unlock it, but that's then pretty much going to allow you to carry over a number of kills that you have after you die once. I'm pretty sure it's a tactical thing, gosh, I can't remember, but nonetheless, it's there in the game, and so you can use it every now and then. That being said, you're most likely not going to have that for quite some time as soon as you play the game. And so I would much rather have this game have score streaks because number 1, score streaks you're going to be able to get on a much more frequent basis because they only depend upon XP. And not just that, score streaks do not encourage, what you guess, camping. Kill streaks on the other hand do exactly the opposite, and they encourage camping, which I personally don't like. In addition to this, there's actually 2 more mechanics in this game that are brand spanking new, and they really encourage camping, number 1 being blind fire, and number 2 the mounting strafe mechanics. The blind fire mechanic is a brand new thing where pretty much you're able to go ahead and cover from behind cover, and then essentially pop your weapon above the environment in which you're camping, say for example a couch or a wall or something else along those lines, and only have the weapon come out and still have your body completely behind the actual environment that you're behind, and yet you're still able to aim, which is just crazy. Likewise, you also have something called mounting strafing, and typically, you're all familiar with something like, say, mounting in general, where you're able to take a shot from this perspective or that perspective while behind cover. Mount strafing, however, is pretty much going to be able to head glitch over every single environment that you can possibly imagine, a box here, a table there, a couch there, and still be able to strafe while only your simple shoulders and head are showing. That's going to add another completely different environment to the game that once again is going to allow players to pretty much say, hey, peekaboo, you can't see me, but I can see you, and you know what? I'm going to be here all game, and you're going to be a little bit salty. And trust me, that's exactly me when I found this out in the game. And having said all this fluff cabbage trash shenanigans, you guys now pretty much get a firm understanding of how the game's then going to be played within the pros, the cons, and of course the neutral points, again, from what I believe to be my personal perspective. Now for some of you, you may agree or disagree, and if you do, by all means, tell me why you do down in the comment section below. My playstyle is certainly not the same as yours, and no matter what you guys say down in the comment section, you always know that I'm going to respect your opinions, and that is something that I can guarantee. So what do you say? You're going to buy the game or you're not? Is it worth it to you? Is this the kind of game that you want? I am very, very excited to hear all your very Gucci and Versace responses, and that's much all that I've got for right now, Diaslayers, and so as always, GG, TNT.